Hi all, welcome to my channel again. In this session, we are going to discuss about the part 2. The part 1 we have already discussed in the previous session, so please go through and watch that video before starting this one. This session is for deploying an nginx web app through AWS Fargate, ECS and ECR. So these are the AWS services which we are using to deploy nginx web app. In the previous session, I have discussed up to creating an IAM user and configuring AWS configuring the AWS management console so that we can access it to the EC2 instance using the AWS CLI. So in this session, we are going to discuss pushing the image to ECR, configuring AWS ECS, using AWS Fargate open port in the security group, project live execution. All of these things we are going to discuss in this session. Okay, aim. So the aim is to deploy an nginx application image through AWS ECR to AWS Fargate and ECS to make our application live. Pushing the image to ECR, navigate to AWS ECR and view the push commands. Earlier we had pushed the image to Docker Hub in my previous blogs. The steps and concepts are similar, but the platform differs. Generally, in IT industry, ECR is used as an image in a registry where we use and store all the images in this ECR, which will have some expiry also. That depends on again the configurations which we are doing. So let's do now. Let's not divert into that. Let's focus on this. So here, push commands for nginx app. If you see here, retrieve an authentication token and authorize your Docker client to your registry. So when we are using AWS CLI, then we can just use this command which will log in into the instance, and we can name the next step. You can see the build your Docker image using the following commands. So these commands you might have already aware: the Docker build, Docker tag, Docker push. Tag is nothing but we are changing the name, and here Docker push will push the image to the to this repository which we have created in the previous section, and build command will build the app. So execute command 1 and 2 in the EC2 instance. This will take command 1 will take the ECR token and provide to Docker for the connection to the repository. Okay, what it will do, the command, the ECR token, it will take the ECR token which we have created in AWS as I have shown in the previous session, and provide that to the Docker for the connection to the repository so that Docker can have the connection with the ECR connection to the repository. So this will build the image from the Docker file. The Docker build command, as you all already know, that command is used to build the Docker image. So here when we are executing this build command, Docker build, then it is building the image as you can see, and execute commands 3 and 4 in the EC2 instance. Thanks. So the third command is that it will do that will tag the image that we have built using the Docker, and the fourth command will push the image from the EC2 instance to ECR. Okay, now when you run this command 2, which is a Docker build, the Docker when we use Docker build, the image got created using the Docker file, but it is still in our EC2 instance. It is not in the ECR yet. So what we need to do, we need to push that image to the ECR so that it can be available in the ECR whenever we are deploying into multiple environments. So this is the method which we use using the pipelines. So we only build once and deploy that build image to the multiple environments at the we deploy that to the multiple environments so that it will reduce the so that we can reuse and download whenever the image is needed. So the next step, here you can see the tag command and the push command. Then it will push the image. So the last ID will be the image ID. After the push, you can check the ECR. There we can see the image got pushed. Whenever we want, we can just download it and use it or deploy into the any environment. Then configuring ECS. ECS is Elastic Container Service. This is the ECR is a repository where we store our images. So the next thing is the Elastic Container Service. So here we can create a cluster in ECS so that our container can run in it. Provide the cluster name, VPC and subnet you want for your application to be available on. So here we are giving the cluster name and the VPC and subnets, everything. Then in the next step we are using AWS Fargate. One of the major disadvantages of using AWS EC2 for an application is we have to create multiple instances in case of an application load increases. That will have a cost impact. So to avoid this, we will use AWS Fargate, which is a serverless technique of providing the specification of applications that will be automatically managed without spinning off any instance. Okay, so this is a serverless. Instead of creating many instances, we can just go for this serverless AWS Fargate to manage the load balancing. Therefore, we will select the AWS Fargate for the cluster to run on. So after this, here after we made the connection, we just click on create. Then we have created the cluster. We used to run docker run to create a container in the EC2 instance out of the Docker image. That was nothing but a task. Therefore, let's create a task definition for our cluster. So here we can, for our cluster, whatever is created, we can just create a task. When you click on this create new task definition and provide the task name and container image details and ports for the application to be run on, we must have exposed a port in our Docker file. So that port we need to give here and the port name, and here the name of the app and the image URL from where it should fetch the image from. Then after giving this, then click on the next, then select the CPU and memory configuration according to the application load. Then let's rest be default. Let the rest be default and click on next. Then review the details and create the task. So once the task is finally created, click on deploy and run task to run the task on the cluster we had created. So when we click on that, then the task will get run. So choose the cluster, select the launch type to be, choose the cluster here and select the launch type to be Fargate. So in the previous step, as you can see, click on deploy and then run task to run the task. So when you click on the run task on the cluster that we have created, you can just simply select the cluster here, then select the launch type to be Fargate here, and then the deployment configuration is, as you can see, it is a task and desired task is 1. Now click to create. The task is now deployed to the cluster. When this task completes, and then we can say that the deployment has been completed. Navigate to the ENI ID in the task. Then go to the security group URL. There you can see the link. Navigate to the inbound rule and the security group and open the port 80, which is the HTTP, and select my IP to have access for myself. Then after that, project live execution. So navigate to the task that we have created. Take the public IP. Then after copying the public IP, just go to the web browser and see that your task is live. Your project is live. Here we have used everything: ECR, ECS, AWS Fargate, every IAM, AWS CLI. So everything we have used. Now I will explain you which one is used for what purpose. AWS ECS is to manage the container services, and ECR is to store the image which we have created into the repo. There needs to be some repo where our build images which needs to get stored. So for that purpose we have used AWS ECR. And next is AWS Fargate. This is to maintain the load balancing in case if we use the many number of EC2 instances, then it will become a huge task for us. Instead of that, we can use AWS Fargate, which is a serverless. So for that purpose, we have used that and AWS CLI to configure the AWS management console to the EC2 instance that we have created. So these are the services which we have used. Yeah, that's all for today. And if you want to check out this blog, you can check that from this link, which I will be keeping in the description box. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Until then.